Wait, how do I start this thing off again? Oh, yeah. On today's show, I am joined by Dungeon Master Extraordinaire, Adam Brill. And Adam and I discuss all things Dungeons and Dragons, including different types of campaign settings, whether he prefers to be a player or a DM, and any advice we would give to someone looking to get into D&D. So, let's roll for initiative and critical hit on this edition of Free Your Geek.
By the power of Grayskull,
You have failed this city. Torpitize! Go.
Winter is coming.
Finish him!
fatality.
I really want to focus on Dungeons and Dragons, but when I do these podcasts, I always like to ask, if you like when we met, because, it's fun because I do this podcast with a bunch of my different friends and we all have like different interests and whatnot. And I always ask the same question. How did we meet? What were your initial thoughts of me? I don't get offended, so don't worry about that. But I think, I think you and I met in 2018, was it 2019, something like that. We had a D&D game. That's how I met you, and that's obviously the crux of our conversation is going to be
right.
in relation to Dungeons and Dragons. But just go ahead and talk to me about like how we met and
So I'm gonna go ahead and go a little deeper than that,
go for it.
if I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was working at Amazon at the time, right? And I was working with a very extroverted person, one of your friends, and we shared an office. I basically got adopted as an introvert with him, and I was running a game for about a year or two, give or take, more or less. And some of those players were dropping off, and we were picking up new players. And Sam came in as a druid. Aubrey came in as a druid. And eventually, like, we started like replacing players more or less, and it was a good time, because I've run some pretty large games, and it was nice to have players, like drop in and drop off, whatever. I hate to see players leave, but at the same time, like when you're getting new players coming in, that's great.
Well, so just I love that. So new players coming in, coming out. Obviously, it keeps it fresh. It brings in, different levels of experience per player, which
Yes.
you'll get a bit. And just to keep it a little bit more kosher too, just kind of to introduce people that might not be familiar with Dungeons and Dragons. You talked about two players that joined what we would call a campaign or a storyline as you're
Mhm.
running the game, and you said they were both the class of druid. So could you go into a little detail, just like a 50,000 foot view of what a druid is?
No, of course. So to your point, like a campaign is like basically like a storyline, as you said. Uh, you're going from point A to point B. Like there's an objective. You kind of like spawn in, and there is X that you have to defeat, right?
There's an objective.
Yeah, more or less. Like
How you get there, though, is
how
that's up to the players.
exactly, yes. How do you get there? Is the whole thing is a story, right? And so say you have two druids. Wow. Like that's like really, really hard to deal with. Because druids, they're healers, they're nature based, and they have so many different abilities. But like you have to have a balanced party, you know?
Well, I agree. So the idea, so for the casual viewer that may not be familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, there's a myriad of different classes that you can create as a character. When you create your character, there's a number of different classes. So you have those that might be like a healer, like a cleric, which is like a priest, or a druid, who's somebody more of nature, or a fighter, or a depending on which
Barbarian
edition you
or
play, a barbarian, or a paladin, which tends to be more melee and combat heavy, where some of the spellcasters, depending on if you do like a wizard or a sorcerer or a warlock, it's all more either offensive, defensive, or healing spells as well. So depending on what the category or position that your character wants to play. So I think, Adam, to your point, if I can speak for you, it's when you're running a game with two new players who are both playing the same class of character, it doesn't always lead to the same flavor of a story that you can tell. And I don't want to put words in your mouth.
no, 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 no. Like, so here's the thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with having two of the same class, if I'm being honest. Because sometimes that can be very, very powerful. Sometimes it can be too powerful if we're, like all things being even, right? But you want a balanced party. You need a fighter, you need a healer, you need somebody who can do the wizard stuff. Like, you need all of those things. But if you end up with too much of one thing, like that's where the DM has to kind of more or less, like, I don't know, like um adjust the story.
Right. So, and then again, for maybe the novice viewer or listener, I shouldn't say viewer because we're not doing video, but DM or GM, those are typically interchangeable. But it's essentially that's the
Disagree, but
person.
okay.
Okay, okay. Well, we'll get there. Okay, so let's use your terminology. The DM, the dungeon master, that's pretty much the person that makes the final ruling, right? So all the characters have
Mhm.
choices to make. They have to roll for their abilities and skills and spells and whatnot. And we can get into a little bit more of that later down the line. But the dungeon master is the one that typically does the check. Like, for example, I have a character who's very sneaky. We'll call it the class a thief. I'm responsible for kind of sneaking in and out of the shadows. I have my skill check, I roll, but then any opposing roll to see if I'm maybe discovered would be done typically in secret by the dungeon master. And then they would tell me, for example, I'm trying to sneak up behind this person. As far as I can tell, based on my rolls, I'm sneaking up successfully, but that could be totally different. You roll, and all of a sudden, the opposing character, the person I'm trying to sneak up
Well,
against, might hear a noise or something.
I'll agree with you to an extent. Depends on the edition that you're playing, right?
Yep.
So if we can delve into that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I just want to make sure that the viewers who have never played D&D that might be listening to this
So
might be thinking up, taking up Dungeons and Dragons, but just give them an idea of what each role within the game does, because you have your players and
sure.
then you have your
Okay,
DM.
okay. Let me just dive into that a little bit.
Sure.
Um, so I am basically a DM for second edition, which is one of the older editions,
Yep.
right? So we have things called THACO, which is to hit armor class 0. That's that's what it means, and so it's more math based and everything like that. And there's a huge, huge difference between second edition, 3.5, 4, fifth edition, like huge differences. Okay. Like as you go up, like you're using less and less dice. Eventually it gets to the point where like you're only using the D20, more or less. Like,
So the higher, in your opinion, the higher edition you go to, the less dice you use. So,
correct,
uh,
yeah.
I almost think of it as like, how do I want to word it? It's almost like, hey, I want to watch or listen, I want to listen to music. Well, we can listen on a record, we can listen on a tape, we can listen on a CD, or now it's so much easier that it's just streaming. We can just click something and there's no real physical copy we need to insert or whatnot. We can just do it, stream it right to our phone. So it's the way I kind of look at it is like there's different ways to listen to music. There's just,
Mhm.
it depends which way you want to listen to music.
And there's something wrong about that, by the way.
No, absolutely not.
There's definitely not, because I can tell you 6 ways from Sunday how wrong 3.5 or 4 was. You know, I love 5. I love second edition. Like hell, I forced people to play second edition, right?
Well, okay, so that goes back to my original question. So second edition's what you were DMing, and then this is where,
Mhm.
you had your two druids. So how did we meet? So I guess to kind of go back to that question. So you had the game, you had players coming and going. You were playing second edition, which is one of the older versions, as you mentioned. And you had Sam, you had Aubrey both as druids, as you mentioned. So
Yep.
moving forward, how did you and I meet, and how did I end up becoming a player under Adam's world, so to speak, as a DM?
Yeah. So like that's a hard question, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
So we were playing, and I had players dropping out, players jumping in. And as a DM, you need to be very, very careful about who you are allowing to come in, right? So, like, I have too many fighters, or I have too many healers, or I have too many druids, I have too many whatever, right?
Yep.
And you were like, I'm willing to jump in as whatever. And I knew that Aubrey wasn't going to stay in for very long. Like, she was playing a dwarven fighter. It was great, but sometimes you know when a player is going to drop out.
Hmm.
As a DM, like, you need to be able to gauge that.
I mean, that's understandable, and also to your point too about players like having new people join in. And also, outside of just the needs for a DM, you also have specific personality types that you don't necessarily want. Like it could railroad a party outside of the actual game, in like rather than in the game itself, outside of the game itself, you could have certain people join and want to play that the personalities just clash outside the game.
Yeah,
So,
and that's a huge, huge point, Jeff, is that like we could all be friends outside, but like when you get into a game and you're in this particular situation, like you're not playing you, you're playing your character, right? So when you get put into a situation, like you are playing that situation. You're not with your friends, you're with your party, and that's it. Like sometimes it's hard.
well, I also think to that point, like, so to for the listener, I want to keep wanting to say viewer. I don't know why, but from the listener perspective, so just to kind of paint a picture, so to speak, let's say that, you have a party where, maybe three or four different people playing, each one playing one different character, and your goal is to save this town from some evil whatever. Let's just say whatever, an evil being. And then I'm playing a character that, likes to steal from everything. As I mentioned, the aforementioned thief that's sneaking around. Now I'm starting to steal. I want to not this, we're in this no
Now you're
barren
mentioning my
location.
character, but yeah, sure.
Right, but
Okay.
no, but what I'm saying is if the party all has this one objective and the three or four other people playing these characters are going to this one objective, and this other character is doing things that are railroading the objective, and it's annoying to, like, in real life, to the players who are playing these different characters, it's not the same type of play style, for lack of a better term, I think
Sure.
that can be very frustrating as well. So I say when I came on board, my concern was, I again, I knew Sam. Sam was a buddy of mine that I've known for a while, and I played first edition D&D also with a DM way back in the day named Adam. So shout out to Adam and Paul Casey if they ever listen to this. But those are my first two D&D buddies, like way back. This is like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So it was really, really cool. So I'd played first edition, and then I was asked by Sam to come in and he's like, "Oh, my buddy Adam's got a game. We need a couple of players. Do you want to jump in? It's second edition." I was a little less familiar with it, but second edition and first edition, while not exactly the same, there's a lot of similarities that made the transition from the first to the second edition a little easier. But my overall concern was like I typically I'm a very it takes me a little while to get going and kind of figure out, like, on my personal level, not even on a character level, on a personal level. When I meet new people, I'm always a little bit more reserved and hesitant until I get comfortable, because I don't like to make waves, you know what I mean? So it's like I'm playing
Sure.
a character, and the first thing that Sam brought up, and he suggested, and this is why I want to get your opinion on this. Sam suggested to me that I play a necromancer. And again, for the listeners that
Well,
may not know,
I have
nec-
a question then.
yeah,
Go on. Go on. Go
no, no.
on.
Well, I just want to give to level set. So a necromancer is a type of wizard, but basically has spells that control the dead. It's more a wizard that works over the
Yes.
dead. So that was my first time ever like playing a type of character like that. I typically played a little bit more in my old group. I played like simplistic characters. I'm a fighter. I'm a thief. I one time played an illusionist, similar that it's a spellcaster that makes illusionary constructs, right? So this is my first time playing as a necromancer, and all my characters are typically heroic, good
Mhm.
alignment. So there's also an alignment on
So
older
that's
versions.
kind of what I want to talk about, if I
Yeah.
may interrupt.
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
So speaking on that particular character, as a DM, um, I don't generally allow ever the chaotic, evil. Just just don't do it, because it ruins every party. However, I should say, I think that your character was chaotic neutral.
I think I was
I think that
neutral
he
evil.
shifted.
Yeah.
Neutral
So
evil.
yeah,
Okay.
so essentially, so again, for those that are novice to D&D, in the older versions, I don't know if it's so prevalent in 5e, but you also have your alignment. So you're either like lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good. So again, there's and you can look in. I'm not going to go through each different alignment tree,
Right. But
but evil typically does bad things and doesn't mind hurting people, and then chaotic means that you throw everything into flux and you don't care about typically you don't care about the outcome. You're only in it for yourself. You can railroad a lot of games by being playing too chaotic. So I think I played more of a neutral evil. So the character was still doing bad things, but would you know would
but was he though? Like, so here's the thing. All right. So Bane, for the listeners,
my character Bane.
yeah. So Bane was a necromancer, and he was conscripted, basically, more or less, to fight for the side of good. But he's still Bane. Like, he's still going to be him, you know, and he's going to do things his way, right?
Right. Well,
No.
so that's the thing. So we'd be fighting whatever creatures. I'd be, hired. I was part of the Assassins Guild in Adam's world. And I want to kind of get into that in a few minutes. But yeah, so basically I was, killing things, killing, enemies, and then I was basically taking their body parts and I was making like a Frankenstein monster, you know what I mean? Or I made a bone golem, so this giant hulking figure made out of bone. What did I name him? Did I name him Femur? Was that it? I forget what it was.
Femur. Yeah.
But it was just like, so again, I would kill things and then I would basically dig up graves and all that fun stuff and take the body parts. And so I guess overall, as you know, and this is funny because I love how we're like going on this is still question number one on my sheet, but I just love the in-depth conversation we're having. But that was my major concern, was like not playing this character before, not meeting you. I don't know if you want to go through the other people that were in the party. I don't know if you want to name names. I'll leave that up to you. But there were a couple other players there. Obviously, we mentioned Sam, but you know, another player came in as well.
Yeah.
And then we had
You're
another.
asking the questions, so
Yeah, but I guess my point, my overall question, I guess to you then from a DM perspective, is how receptive were you to myself playing this necromancer? First of all, like meeting me and then finding out my play style. Did you the first few times, and for what you can from what you can recall, I don't know if you can or not, did you ever
yeah.
feel like, all right, this guy is going to fit in here great, or oh, his play style is a little bit different than what I'm accustomed to?
And that, oh, man, that's hard. Man, that's hard.
Or okay,
So
then just first initial thoughts
no, no,
then,
no,
like
no. But what I'm saying
bluff
is,
my ego a little bit. I don't care, just go for
no,
it. You know what I mean? Like,
what I'm saying is, like, when you meet a new player, um, they're gonna be awesome or awful. Like that's it. Like you get one or the other. That's
well,
that.
I would argue that depending on the experience of the player. So where I had a little bit of experience playing a different edition,
No, no, no.
you
Uh,
don't agree with that.
I absolutely do not agree with that. Because like I have definitely I have DM'd for a lot of people, and like either you're awesome or awful.
Well, I
There,
think
but however, I'm sorry to cut you
no,
off.
please go ahead.
Um, there are awful players that you can elevate to awesome players. And
Okay,
there are
because
and there are awesome players that actually are kind of awful.
okay.
Like, like
Well, I was going to throw the caveat out there that, you know, if you're a new player and you're still learning the game, you might
yep,
not be
yep.
awesome right off the bat. You might be thinking outside the box. You might have
Mhm.
questions. You might be a little hesitant the first few games, but as you get comfortable and you learn the rules, I think that you can kind of, especially depending on the play style. So I think that's kind of the other point to make is when you, if there's
I
anybody here
agree.
that's thinking about picking up and trying Dungeons and Dragons, whatever edition it might be, I would also give them I would give them just the advice, the unsolicited advice, but I think it's important advice is that make sure that you find a group of players that you like their play style, because some, you know, we there's a terminology that goes around in the D&D community called murder hobos, where it's just I just want to go in
Yeah.
and kill everything, right? And some people like more narrative storytelling, other people like more rules based, other people like the rules to get bent a little bit in sake of the story,
All
and it
right. So
depends
can
on
I
what.
ask you,
Yeah.
not to cut you off again, here I do.
No, it's good. This is how it works,
But
man.
are you a narrative person, or are you a kind of like point A to point B?
I think I'd like to describe myself as a little bit of a hybrid, if it will, because I mean, again, playing first edition with Adam and Paul, and this is what I will get into this next because this is actually a perfect talking point. We played all pre-printed modules, so we played, you know, a campaign that had already had stories written from, you know, some of the greats of D&D lore, you know, throughout the 70s and 80s and whatnot. Um, so it was more very much straightforward. This is what our goal is. This is what we do, you know, rules as written type of thing. And
Mhm.
then that was one of the other kind of hurdles is and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel you also have more of a narrative story. So for those that are new, so you can have pre-written campaigns where, you know, authors will write these things and the
That's what I
DM.
was going to ask. Is like, what do you think I was?
Well, I didn't know. That's what I'm saying. I was just like, oh, I haven't played D&D in a few years. You know, I'm getting invited. What do I have to lose? Let me try. And then that's when I kind of really kind of like started learning like for me, just coming from one world where everything was like, you don't write any stories, you just play the modules as written. The DM goes through those modules and then plays the game based on the story that somebody else created, to a whole other facet where it's like, no, in this example and this
I don't
type
find
of
that fun.
campaign, well, that's what it is. And that's where I think it was fun for me initially, where it's like, okay, cool, it's combat, it's whatever, it's strategic. Then it's more to your point. So we have what they call homebrew campaigns. So this is where the DM or whoever's running the game at that point can write their own stories, write their own tales, and then you create that character and they fit into that narrative. And that was like a total culture shock to me, which was like amazing, because now it alleviates, not alleviates, but
Really?
it gives me the credibility, and that's not the word I want to. I always use the wrong words, but it gives me the capability, I should say, to then create a character, and then I get to play the character and react to the world that you create without it necessarily hampering the story, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
you have your story that you have written. We still have objectives. We still have all these other things. But to your point, it's not A to B. It could be A to G to Y to W to B. You know what I mean? And we can still get there where we need to go in your world, versus if it's like this pre-written thing, like here's the beginning and here's the end, and you got to get there. You know, you're still following almost like chapters in a book, if you will. Whereas I feel if it's like a homebrew campaign, it's like I feel like there's a little bit more leeway. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you've been DMing a lot longer than I have, but that's just my take on it.
Well, all right. So let's talk about that. All right. So I've DM'd for, oh, I don't know, like 20 years or so. And you came under my wing, right?
Yep, I love this. It's like it's in a Padawan and a Jedi master right here. So
Right.
I love
But
it.
like, what did you learn from me?
Ooh, that's a good question. So there's a couple things that you do, and I don't know if you want to spill some of your secrets about the end of the game after the end of each session, what we do as far as awarding like XP. I don't want to like give that
No,
away per se.
go ahead.
All right, so we have at the so let me kind of paint the picture here. In the edition I came from, first edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, you get your experience points and you level up your character through experience points. So, for example, if I'm playing a dwarf fighter, I have 10 hit points, we'll say, just on a whim. That means after I lose those 10 hit points and I go to zero after I get attacked, I'm unconscious or I could die, yada yada yada. So your hit points are basically like your life points. So when you level up in first edition D&D, you get experience points from the gold or treasure you collect and the foes or monsters that you vanquish. Adam introduced a new concept to me called nominations at the end of the game. So in a homebrew campaign, he does a thing called nominations. So throughout the campaign, if a player did something extraordinarily clever or unique or whatnot that's outside the normal realm of thinking, or as a player you're role playing a certain way and you maybe say like a catchphrase, or you do something, you know, out of not even out of character, but something that the DM necessarily wasn't expecting, or one of the other players found amusing, you can award experience points also based on nomination. So, for example, if I'm playing a character, and again, say I'm playing a thief, and we stumble upon something else, and they're chasing us, and we're going down some stairs, and I throw like a vat of oil on the stairs, and the monster or the being coming after us slips on the oil and fought. That's something I wouldn't necessarily think that as a normal playthrough, but hey, if something happens and it causes what is it? Ad, you know,
Oh, like
advantage an
advantageous, yeah.
advantageous, that's the word I was looking for, a situation for the players, like, oh, you know what, that was something outside of the box I didn't think of, that was actually very clever, I'm going to give you 200 XP for doing that. And that's literally, so that was new for me, is like writing some stuff down, and taking notes is always fun in D&D because like you have to remember like if you're talking to a certain person or you have an objective or you find like a clue or a riddle or something else, I always write notes and write that down. But at the same time, I also now keep a separate page that I'm writing down, oh, this character said something really funny. This character, saved our bacon by doing something totally out of the box, or this person just, we were going to get into some trouble and this person was able to like sweet talk our way out of it so we didn't get
Yeah.
arrested by the guard.
Sometimes it's just funny.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and it's just it's almost like a group of people having a good time, enjoying the game, role playing, and enjoying the role playing portion of the game as well. So that
yeah.
was new to me. So to your question, what did I learn from you? So that was a big thing because I love incorporating that now at the end of games, at the end of our sessions, but also like again the homebrew idea, was something totally new to me, like creating my own stories. So I think the big thing I learned from you is almost like how to not make it just like you were saying, not just to create a story, but not make it so A to B. And I can't give too much away because you're part of the campaign where I'm DMing, which we're taking a break from right now. But I think the second half of this campaign, I don't want to over promote it or get overzealous with it, but I think you're going to really enjoy some of the hooks, story hooks and plot hooks that I've
But
placed in.
the fact of the matter is really like there are hooks.
Right, right. So you have to. So again, hooks in this kind of context, like why if you're playing a game, why are your character? What's going to motivate your characters to go do something? You need a hook to bring people in. You need, so if, for example, you're playing a holy person, a cleric type of character, and you hear that, maybe your goal as a cleric is, I want to rid the world of all these undead beings, these ungodly beings from whatever god you tend to worship. And now you hear of a being who might be a necromancer named Bane or something along the lines like, oh, oh, you heard that like six towns away there's some rumblings that this person is raising these dead and these zombies and these skeletons, and that
All
might
right.
hook that I need to go end that. That's an aberration to
So
what I believe in, something like that.
so Jeff, how do you feel about the difference in between like say fifth edition and second edition?
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to ask you the same thing, but we can go there. Fifth edition and second edition. So I haven't really played much of fifth edition. I've obviously watched a lot of you. There's like tons of YouTube videos about there. I mean, obviously the biggest one right now is Critical Role. You have the Legend of Vox Machina. You have the Mighty Nine, both coming. Mighty Nine's another animated
Uh,
series based on it.
can we throw out VLDL?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, good. What is VLDL, Adam?
Viva La Dirt League.
So there's a bunch of different groups, right, that play D&D, whether it's on podcast versions, on YouTube versions, and it's, geek culture being what it is, and video games and movies all kind of referencing D&D, some very popular ones over the last few years. I think 5th edition is pretty much the
Yeah, that's
the
where we should
baseline right
go.
now, right?
That's where we should go.
Right. So I've not played 5th edition yet. I'm curious of it. So
It's good. It's good.
I've been playing I've been playing some Baldur's Gate 3 on the PS5.
Yeah.
And I just to kind of like dip my toes in the water, whet my appetite, whatever analogy you want to use. But yeah, so I've been just different character creations. I feel like there's a lot more customization in 5e. So I guess I'll word it this way. And I forget where I read this or heard this, but I think it's kind of apt. I think earlier editions, first edition, second edition, it's almost like you're playing a character in the Lord of the Rings settings for D&D,
There's
where
nothing wrong with that. Nothing
no,
wrong
which
with
there's
that.
nothing wrong with that, but it's also like I feel like uh fifth edition is more like superheroes, like it's like a ragtag bunch, I would liken it to the Guardians of the Galaxy movies from the MCU. It's all these different species and creatures, like, you know, creating this own little group and going out and saving the world. And, there's different, each one has different characteristics and personalities, and it's all, it's all well and good. And I just feel like the customization aspect of it is way more vast in 5e. So somebody like me coming over from a 2e to even trying to dip my toes in the water for 5e, I sometimes get a little overwhelmed, like, holy moly, like I'm playing a cleric, but now after I play a cleric who's, this guy, now I have a subclass and I can choose from like 4 or 5 different other types of clerics.
Right.
But I can also then not only do a cleric, but then when I get to another certain level, now I can add some, wizard stuff. And I'm just like, oh man,
Well, the whole like subsect, like
yep.
what do they do? What are they called? Fuck.
Multi-classing.
No, it's not multi-classing. It's archetypes, right?
Okay. Yep. Archetypes. Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
true?
Yeah. I mean, again, you would know better than I'm not a 5e expert in the slightest.
No, this is 4E.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm not even familiar with 4e. So you're, dude, I'm throwing
Yeah,
up my hands. That's all. That's all on you, bro.
yeah. Oh well, here we are.
But yeah, no, but that's the case. I mean, I guess that's the case. That's my what are your opinions on 2e versus
So
5e?
no, I'm talking specifically about 4E.
Oh, all right. So
And
let's talk
like,
about 4e.
so we're leveling up, and you know, obviously, you want to level up, right? But
Well,
then
that's kind of the goal. You get more powerful, you get more spells, you get more cool things to do.
sure, yeah, but like then when you get to a certain level, you get to get something else. I don't know how to really explain it. Like it's just like, oh, you made level 10, and now you get to not only be a wizard, but now you're a super sorcerer. I don't know.
Right. It's like you just it goes from like something where you become more powerful, you become more
Right. Like
what's the word I want? You
so I was playing
well rounded, I guess. You can do more things. It gives you more
so I was playing a
capability.
I was playing a warrior, and I had a polearm, right? And it was pretty cool. I had like super reach and everything like that. And when I reached a certain level, I got a what was called like Paragon, right?
Okay, explain that.
So a Paragon is when you meet the next level.
Okay.
So you get more abilities, right?
So give me an example of a more ability then. Like
Okay.
an additional ability.
Okay. So say I have I don't know, a polearm, and like yes, I can slash through, I don't know, 2 blocks, right?
Yep.
Um Now I can do 4 blocks.
So it gives you more
Yeah, it
more
makes
more
you,
ability. Yeah,
yeah,
it allows you to do more. Like could be a thing like, and oh, now I can attack, 4 people at a time instead of just the one, again,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yes.
So it helps you grow as a character, but then on the other side, then the DM then moving forward needs to make the encounters or the battles or the
More
storyline
difficult.
more challenging to the players as they level up.
Yes.
So that being said, you talked about being a 20-year DM. You talked about playing some different characters. What do you prefer? Would you rather be a player or a DM? What's more fun for you? And what do you think of the perks of each one?
Man, that is hard. Um Honestly, truly, I'd rather be a player, but depends on how many players we have. So like if I have like 5 players, fine. But I have played games that had like 12 players.
Right.
That's hard. That is really, really hard. So like I would always take player over DM.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's interesting. So for me personally, I like being a player myself just because I feel like, depending on how you play too. So that's I didn't even bring that up. Like right now in the world of even like any, not even D&D, but in like any tabletop role playing game, uh you can do it in person, or there's so many different virtual boards now. You can do it all online,
sure.
which we tend to do because, obviously with time permitting, it's kind of tough to get
Yeah.
everybody in the same place at the same time. And we all have lives and whatnot. So right now, our game is all pretty much virtual. So
No, no, I want to say real quick,
yeah,
is the game that I had that had like 12 players, that was Group D. And we played for 2 years. Like 12 people every Monday. They played that game,
right.
which was insane. Like
It's,
try to get that many people to do that.
oh, it's a commitment for sure.
Yeah, like you can't.
Right. And especially if you're doing a homebrew, like, so that's the thing for me. Like, even with the amount of players, because right now I think consistent players, uh, there's three other, like, there's pretty much five of us in this group, right? Theoretically, give or
Yeah.
take at any point in time. Sometimes four, like mostly four, sometimes five, depending on, if a couple of other friends decide to join. But it's currently like I'm the DM, and then I DM for three other players, right? Um,
Hmm.
Even that, like the preparation that has to go into that can be daunting depending on the amount of story that you want to tell. I find doing it virtually a little easier just because then I can use different programs to make the different maps and stuff that we play on, the different towns. Everything's a little bit easier to kind of give it the flair or the look or the feel that I'm going for, as opposed to, using like a dry erase board or something like we would do in person, right? Or like like just like a mat that we can put down on a table or whatever, a grid, something like that. But at the same time, I feel like the DM can tell the type of story they want to tell, which I love. I love the storytelling aspect of it, but from a kind of, I don't even want to say improv because I hate when people say improv, but more from like a role playing perspective.
Hmm.
I just love the freedom that like I get to know my character um so well, or at least create the character that I like to have fun with. Like, not to make it all about me, but the current game that we're playing, that my I created a dwarven tank character because I think the party needed one, and I just make him a buffoon type of idiot that talks with a really bad Boston accent, and it's just so fun to do. And
So,
it's just everybody else is again playing a character. Not, I don't want to say more serious, but they're more into the world. So I guess the best way I can describe it is, you ever see those like Sam Adams commercials where it's like your cousin from Boston,
mhm.
like I want to play as that idiot cousin from Boston. Like that's my character. You know what I mean? And then everybody else is like trying to do like, their normal thing and trying to have serious conversations, but then here comes this buffoon where it's not going to railroad the campaign or railroad the storytelling, but it's just like, dude, like go away. Your job is to go hack something up. You know what I mean? If that
So let me
go
ask you
hack and
this.
slash,
Is your favorite thing being a DM or a player?
I think so. Again, I think this is a loaded question. I think it depends on who the DM is. You know what I mean?
All right,
If I had a,
say I'm the DM.
I would love to be a player. If you were DMing a game, I'd rather be a player than DM, a game. But at the same time, like for me, like, cause I like to be a little bit more creative, like to come up with an idea for a story and be like, oh my God, I think this is kind of a cool concept. Like you can, like, the one we're playing now, I won't get, I'm kind of kicking around the idea of doing, like mini podcasts on just reading the recaps.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about doing that. I think it might be a good idea. I don't know.
I love it. I love it.
I'm gonna let the listeners go in on that. But yeah, my thought is I had this idea. I came up with this very basic concept. Like, so for me as a DM, and this is where I think again, going back to the question where what did I take from you and what did I learn from you? I took a simple concept. Okay, here's this like very dangerous spell book. You know, years ago, this clandestine group of elven magic users, wizards, whatever, years and years and years ago, eons ago, whatever it was, took the pages from this book and scattered it. They deemed it too powerful. Now somebody's trying to put them all back together. That's like, paint by numbers 101, right? Like, okay, that's just the idea. So you got to stop them from getting all these pages. Great. Now when the players in this group create these characters, roll up their characters, give me their backstory. Now that's more meat on the bone where now I can take this information and now start weaving the story to incorporate additional, twists and turns and other things. And, we haven't really hit that part yet. My goal, without giving too much away, is to lead you guys up and level you guys all up to one point. And then, we're taking a break right now. We're going to be doing a different game with a different set of characters where I'm not going to be DMing and I'm going to be more of a player character. But now I'm going to, like, for the second arc of this story, that's when it's all really going to start hitting the fan. My goal
No,
at this point
I
was,
want to get back to where we are.
okay,
Okay. So where you are, you have a good spot. Tell me
like,
about that.
so can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
So, all right. So every one of us has a different I don't know, like landing pad.
Okay.
Uh, like I don't know,
So
geography,
yeah,
right?
sure.
But you have one. So Aiden is mine.
Yeah.
And like everyone has kind of grown off that. What is yours?
So as well, from like you were talking about from like as far as a continent and whatnot goes.
Yeah,
All right. So again, for the listeners here in Adam's campaign, his homebrew campaign, we're all working off the continent of Aden, and the capital city is Girin, if I'm not mistaken.
correct.
Okay. So when I got introduced to this game or the second edition and this group of players through Adam, that was kind of the idea. So my whole thing and not my philosophy, and you know what, I'll give everybody a shout out. So we play with Sam and Ronnie right now. And I love everybody's got a different DM style. Ronnie gets really into the lore. He reminds me of Tolkien so much with like he's got like histories of each, royal family and this and I'm like, dude, okay. Sometimes to me that's personally I get information overload. That's not a knock on him or whatever. I just sometimes like I can't keep track of all that. That's why again I try to take copious amounts of notes and whatnot. I think when Sam DMs, it's a little bit more whimsical. And I think you and I are, of all of us, the four of us, I think you and I are pretty much aligned. It's very similar with the way we kind of DM and storytell and world build and all this other stuff. My idea, so we were playing these characters on your continent of Aden, which has its own history. It has its royal family. It has its whole, history there. When I decided to DM, or when, I think we got to the point, and correct me if I'm wrong, where, you've been DMing a long time. You were DMing this whole world. I think Sam and I both took turns. I think even Ronnie took a turn DMing within your world of Aden, specifically the capital city of Girin.
No.
And what I kind of found was, I liked playing that, but at the same time, if I'm gonna DM again and give you a little bit of a reprieve or a break or whatnot, and just let you like enjoy playing just as a player character, maybe I don't want to be beholden, what's the word? Beholden to all the rules and the history and whatnot. So my thought was, okay, we have Adam's continent of Girin, and in talking with you, like, have we ever explored anything outside of that? And I believe you said no, we don't. This is just the world we've been playing in for the X amount of years. And I said, perfect. So if I'm going to DM, let's start with a brand new cast of characters. We can all roll up
Mhm.
at starting at the first level. So we're all like super squishy. We can all die really easy. So I'm going to make the first few encounters, or first few
Well,
chapters of my story, and all these battles, all these story arcs, not super difficult, but it's also like, hey, we got to play smartly, because I believe you're the one that came up with the example. If we're at a tavern trying to get some information and we piss somebody off and they take a bar stool and hit us over the head, if we don't roll properly, that bar stool could kill us. Where once you get to, like, say level like 4 or 5, it's like, yeah, that's going to do some damage, but it's like I'm gonna maybe stumble a little bit, and I'm gonna keep going, and I'm gonna whoop that dude's butt. You know what I mean? So my overall thought was like, let's create a brand new continent where it's kind of like Wild West. There is no real, we have one, I think, from our story points when we were doing your story and your homebrew, that I think I made a city from another continent called Belgrove. So I used that as my capital city in this other place, and I created a whole continent called the Shielded Havens. And, it's kind of like, as we explore, you learn more and more, but there's no, there's no monarchy, there's no royal family, there's no real history, because I want it to be a little bit more fluid for me, storytelling, without, and again, not a knock on you or your world, but I just didn't want to necessarily have to be handcuffed, or
mhm.
even on the other side, I don't want all the work that you put in to crafting this world to almost do it a disservice and be like, yep, this is what we're gonna do. And you're like, dude, that's not what I like. That's, I put in like however many man hours creating this whole thing, and now you're kind of just like crapping on it or making a mockery of it by doing this type of storyline. So I just wanted to like
I
have
put a lot of hours.
you know what I mean? Does that make sense though?
Yeah, no,
So
yeah,
I didn't want to do anything wrong by you. I wanted to honor what you've created, but also be able to tell my own story without, having any conflict in the um chronological things that happened on your world. You know what I mean? On your
yeah,
continent.
yeah,
So the idea was, okay, you have this one central city, and then, let's start all at level 1. And then like I said, I just decided, let's do the simplest MacGuffin, since it's my first time doing a, homebrew campaign and crafting my own story. So let's, very simplistic plot hook. And here's the thing. And then, like I said, once I found each of your characters' backstories, I wrote in a little thing where you each fell into a dream, and like your worst fears would come true if this bad thing that they gained all these pages back came to pass. So that's what got you all on board. Great. So now that I had this party together, now it's now kind of DMing a group with different characters and personalities and trying to make it all kosher, and then finding certain things. So I don't know if you want to talk too much about your character Riven, but in our world, Riven is all about the coin, right? So
yeah.
I did a little plot hook where you guys went to a crypt and you found a few shiny baubles on top of a sarcophagus. And Riven had to fight the urge, and maybe through the urging of some of the other party members, not to pick it up. Had you picked it up, maybe something would have happened, maybe not. But, those are the things I like to put in, and like, have those character defining moments or whatnot, being like, are you going to make the right choice? Are you going to make the greedy choice? Are you going to make a choice that could help or hinder you? You know what I mean? So that's
Good.
my thought. So did that answer your question? And again, this is my podcast. I'm supposed to be asking you the questions, but I love the fact that you're asking me. But did that answer your question?
You did.
All right, perfect. Yeah. So I guess to kind of wrap up as we're winding down, we've kind of talked, and I hope we didn't get too inside baseball with some of the terminology and whatnot. But if somebody is listening on this and they want to start playing D&D, um, just some general tips. How would you suggest that what are some of the tips that you would give them, or how do you suggest they try out
Um,
D&D? Do you think you should, again, you mentioned VLDL. Do you think to have them watch some videos? Do you think that should be,
no, like just
sit in and observe, or just pick it up and start
no, just
playing?
just like jump in, do it. Like I want them to literally just go in and do it, and that's fine. But uh,
So
yeah,
I think it goes back to find. I think it, and maybe this is something we should talk about before we like wrap things up. But to that point, if somebody new wants to try out, I think it's very important to have a session zero just to make sure that the people you're playing with your kind of vibes with you, right? We talked about that a
um,
little earlier.
yeah,
The play
yeah,
style and whatnot. Because you might join a game and you're like, this is no fun for me. Like I'm not having fun playing in this game. And that might not be you not enjoying the game. It might just be you not having the right people to play with, or right being part of the right composition of the group that's playing. Because I'll put it to you this
no, I
way,
would agree with that. Yeah,
you know so
yeah,
I think that's the most important thing for new players. Like find a DM that is obviously open to new players and is going to be, I don't want to say hand holding, but even
mm,
DMing. Like you helped me DM that first time, just to use like virtual tabletop or roll 20, something along those lines. You kind of like you sat back, and then you helped me put the pieces where they need to go. I think from a player perspective, it's super important for a DM to be like, hey, we want you to learn, we want you to have fun. This is how we play. Like you said, you could find a party that's very rules heavy and combat heavy, and you can find a party that might be more, storytelling and narrative style too. So I think depending on the style you want to do, and that's what typically session zero tends to be, is where you go in and the DM kind of sets the stage. This is how we're gonna play the game. This is how I expect, this is what I look for my players. And again, I don't know if every session zero is a little bit different, but I think like once you find that type of play style that you like, then just like jump in with both feet. And as long as you have a good party of people that understand, like, hey, I'm a newbie. I want to try this out. I want to get into this. I feel like the community for the most part is very, very welcoming.
I agree with that. Yeah,
Any other things that you would suggest, or did I kind of hit the nail on the head? I don't want to
no,
steal your thunder, but
no, you got
all right.
got the
Well,
whole
I mean,
thing.
I think this is a good talk about a little bit of D&D and what it's like to be a forever DM and a player, and just like some of the things that go into having a fun game, and depending on what your play style is. I think that's great. I usually take this part of the podcast to see if there's anything you want to plug, and I know you mentioned VLDL, but yeah, if you want to give them another shout, they're on YouTube, right? Is that where you
Yep,
watch their stuff? So it's how many people in VLDL, Viva La Dirt League, right? Is that what it is?
it
Remind me again.
is.
It's a group of guys playing some D&D, and I think it's more on the satirical side, a little bit more like on the funny side, or is it more of
It
a
is.
comedy
Yeah,
side?
yeah.
So, and it can be a little crude if I'm not mistaken, or am
Um,
I
Not really.
no?
No, no.
So there's a bunch of dudes playing D&D. Do you know what edition they play?
Mostly fifth. Yeah.
Okay. So again, if somebody's looking to get into fifth edition, and that's like the baseline, that's the current
Yeah,
edition that's out
so
now.
if we're gonna like a shout out, let's do Robert Hartley.
Okay.
So
Give me a
um
little info on that.
so Robert Hartley is a fifth edition DM who does great work for the whole, you know, fifth edition,
And
D&D.
where can people check him out?
Um well, Instagram and
All right.
Facebook.
All right.
Like,
So I'll include the link in the show notes for the Instagram, and people can give a follow and check that out too.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.